Hello and welcome to News Central Television. I am Dapo Adegboye. The top stories at this hour. Nigerian government describes looting of Abuja warehouse as a criminal act. Prosecutors make case for crimes against humanity charge in Guinea massacre trial. Accused brothers assert conditions for extradition in legal battle in AK murder case. Details in a moment. On a sober note, emotions were high as family, friends, and associates gathered to celebrate the life of Chizi Wigwe, the son of the late Group Managing Director of Access Holdings, Herbert Wigwe. The event took place at the Eko Hotel in Lagos, southwest Nigeria. Among the dignitaries present were Jimmy Odukoya, Senior Pastor, Fountain of Life Church, and Anya Adams, Senior Director, Africa Finance Corporation. Chizi, alongside his father and mother, died in a helicopter crash on February 9th, that's 2024, in the United States, on his way to attend the Super Bowl 58 championship in Las Vegas.
I always knew that I would lose Chizi, but my biggest fear was to lose it to Herbert Wigwe, as he used to call him, Master Wigwe. So I never thought I would compete with the Lord and that he would go home before all of us. So in my time, the struggle was not when he will leave the AFC team, but how long we can keep him. And I would even gesture to him, you know, you're not ready to go to your dad yet. Wokocha is there, so don't worry. And that was a selfish motive. But in all seriousness, on behalf of the entire AFC family, our president, Samaila Zuburu, who is with us, who should have made some of these comments, but he's been rather emotional, and not only for Chizi, but for his father, Herbert, Ike, and Roosevelt, who are our shareholder. So the Access family is a fabric of what AFC is. And we were very lucky and honored to have Chizi.
And when these things happen, it forces us to stop and pause and face the reality that one day we all are going to die. It forces us to realize that at some point, we don't know the hour, the time, the moment, the season, we all will be gathered here and it will be our service. What will be said about you? What will be said about me? What legacy will we leave behind? I sat back and I listened to all the beautiful tributes of Chizi and how impactful his life was in such a short time. And it's quite clear that it's never about the length of time, but the quality of time. About the impact he made, about how great a light he was, and hopefully his life inspires us to want to do better. I'm reminded of a saying. It says, when you are born, you cry, while everybody else rejoices. Live your life in such a way.
The funeral rites for the wife, Chizoba Wigwe, will be held later this evening. News Central will bring you live coverage of the event as well. The Minister of State, Federal Capital Territory, Mariya Mahmoud, has described the looting of the warehouse in the area as a criminal act. She expressed disappointment in the youth in the area. Mahmoud explained that the government was replenishing the warehouse to distribute palliatives to 6 area councils in the FCT when the attack occurred. The minister assured that the FCT administration would establish police posts in all government warehouses across the territory to reinforce security, as police securities and authorities in the FCT are in the wake of the incident said 15 persons have been arrested, including 2 local security guards employed by the warehouse management. Exhibits such as 26 bags of maize, 5 motorcycles, and some vandalized aluminium roofing were recovered from the suspects. In the meantime, the governor of Plateau State, Caleb Mutfwang, says agriculture remains the only way out of the harsh economic situation in the country. The governor was speaking at the Government House in Jos during the inauguration of some special advisors and other government executives. News Central's Chizoba Anyonwe was at the event and has this to say.
A total of 20 men and 2 women were on Monday inaugurated by Governor Caleb Mutfwang to join others in making Plateau State a better one. According to the governor, it is time for all hands to be on deck if the hopes and aspirations of the people of Plateau will see the light of day. For him, agriculture remains the only way out.
Whatever assignment you're carrying out, it must dovetail into agriculture. Because if we don't liberate all the potentials that God has deposited in the land, we will not lift ourselves out of poverty. So we're going to come aggressively on that. And it will be my joy and delight to see every space of land occupied by one form of agricultural commodity or the other.
As for the current high cost of living in the country, occasioned by the harsh economy, the governor is hopeful that things will get better soon.
This government inherited a worse situation than 1999. This government inherited an economy where we simply printed money up to the tune of 30 trillion and shared. This government inherited an economy where the crude oil we are yet to take out of the ground has been sold in advance. So when you are talking about the fall of the Naira, it's not rocket science. We sold our future under the last administration.
For these newly sworn-in special advisors, nothing short of service delivery is expected.
Once also use the opportunity to thank His Excellency for giving it faith to see in us those qualities to be able to lead and to also advise at various capacities. That shows the confidence you have in us, and by God's grace, we are not going to disappoint you. We are not going to disappoint people of Plateau State.
24 liaison officers for the 17 local government areas and some other heads of MDAs were also announced at the event. In Jos for News Central, I am Chizoba Anyonwe.
The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, with funding from the Danish government and partnership with the Nigerian Navy, has commissioned a ship-in-a-box simulator to improve maritime security and also tackle crimes on the sea. The training tool is expected to improve the quality and frequency of training while reducing cost as well as safety risk associated with the conduct of exercises at sea. Now, News Central's Adegboye Odushoga reports.
Nigeria's fight against drug trafficking is gaining more traction, with multiple arrests and seizures on the waterways, as it has tagged one of the main transit routes for illegal drugs in the Gulf of Guinea. The illicit trade has made it necessary for law enforcement officers to improve on their skills and preparedness amidst evolving innovative measures by syndicate crime groups. To this effect, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, with funding from the Danish government and partnership with the Nigerian Navy, launched this ship-in-a-box simulator at the Joint Maritime Security Training Center at the Navy Town, Lagos, Nigeria.
Follow them. All right.
I hear from many colleagues also attending this event that this is something to replicate in other countries. And there's a reason why people are interested. It's because it provides a realistic model, a realistic scenario for special forces, for Navy to train on how you board a ship. This is in everybody's interest. I'm very optimistic that this will create great results.
It's an opportunity to get hands-on training, realistic training that will enable them to perform their job with less fear when they get to sea. So it's a modern simulator that will go a long way to boost Nigerians' a strong training capacity, as well as that of our neighboring partners within the Gulf of Guinea.
According to the United Nations, the Ship-in-a-Box simulator is a valuable training tool that enhances capacity of military and civilian maritime law enforcement personnel in the conduct of visit, board, search and seizure operations.
This is a really unique structure in many regards. It gives this opportunity to conduct practical training, but to do so at a relatively small cost and with much less risk than if you conduct such trainings at high sea. So as such, it is really critical. You have also seen that already today you saw training some of the forces of other countries. So it also helps to foster cooperation across the various maritime security and law enforcement agencies in the Gulf of Guinea.
The newly launched training tool is expected to boost regional and international maritime security while ensuring unhindered flow of trade with various national, regional and international frameworks. In Lagos for News Central, Adeshewa Odushoga.
Let's go on a quick break. When we return, we have more stories. Stay with us. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission says banks are linked to about 70% of the financial crimes in Nigeria. The FCC's chairman, that's Ola Olukoyede, disclosed this while speaking in Abuja at the 2023 annual retreat and general meeting of the Association of Chief Audit Executives of Banks in Nigeria. He pointed out that the banking sector was increasingly becoming a cesspool of fraudulent activities. The EFCC chief, who was represented by the Director, Internal Audit, EFCC Adegboye, said there was a need for concerted effort by relevant authorities and professionals, especially audit executives, to prevent and tackle the issues involved. He charged the association to monitor the financial activities of banks, comparing actual and budgeted revenue with expenses, carry out periodical reviews, checks, amongst others. The stakeholders in Blockchain Technology Association of Nigeria has introduced a code of conduct for virtual asset service providers amidst the Binance ban in the country. This code, applicable to both C-band members and non-members, emphasizes adherence to laws, transparent disclosure, robust security measures, customer protection, and commitment to anti-money laundering and also combating the financing of terrorism activities. As a self-regulatory entity, C-band aims to instill responsible and ethical practices in Nigeria's cryptocurrency sector, contributing to the restoration of trust and confidence amidst recent regulatory developments, including the Binance ban within the country. Education cannot wait. A global fund for education in emergencies of the United Nations has raised concerns over the increasing number of out-of-school children in Africa. This was during a discussion where the executive director of the group called on the international community to support efforts that will take the children back to school. Now, News Central's Umaru Kirawa completes the report.
There are millions of children across the African continent who are not attending school or receiving any form of formal education. In Nigeria, the situation is even more dire, with approximately 20 million out-of-school children. This is largely due to various reasons such as conflict, poverty, and lack of access to quality education.
9 out of 10 school-age children in sub-Saharan Africa cannot read a simple text. How is this possible in the 21st century? Why did this happen? It can be changed, but we got to have a greater equity and sharing of resources to allow the African continent to really make sense of 2024 as the year of education for Africa.
While many states across northern Nigeria are trying to rebuild schools, employ teachers and domesticate the Child Right Act, which guarantees every child the opportunity to learn and thrive, most often it lacks practical footings.
15 million teachers are required in order to provide primary and secondary education to children to reach all sustainable human development goals by 2030, education being the fourth sustainable development goal, and also a foundational goal to achieve all other sustainable human development goals.
Without urgent intervention, the future of millions of children and the country as a whole is said to be at risk.
So far we invested 20.1 million, and we are entering a second phase, and we are appealing to the world to help contribute.
The message here is that it is better late than never, and no effort is too little, as the responsibility of ensuring that the country's future leaders are educated cannot be left in the hands of government alone. It is also agreed that the time to make the efforts is now, as the future of the younger generation is at stake. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Let's take you back to the Abuja loot story, where we earlier told you that the Minister of State, Federal Capital Territory, Mariya Mahmoud, has described the looting of a warehouse in the area as a criminal act. She expressed disappointment in the youths in the area. She also explained that the government was replenishing the warehouse to distribute palliatives to 6 area councils in the FCT when the attack occurred. Now, to discuss this further on the news, I am joined by Associate Professor of Public Law, Rivers State University, Ritchard Wokocha. Thank you so much for your time, Professor Wokocha.
Thank you, and good evening, Nigerians.
All right, let me start by asking first, how would you, or what would you describe the attack on the warehouse, in Abuja as? Some have said it's a product of the hunger in the land, a reflection of course, the want and hunger in the land, while some have described it, just like the minister here, as a criminal act.
Well, first, it's unfortunate. It's clearly a reflection of the state of things with citizens of the country who are residents in Abuja. And it's also a reflection of what is going on around the rest of the country. It's always a criminal act to take what is not yours. There is no doubt about that. It's a criminal act. Our concern is why have things gotten to this level? And that's where we should begin to think of what to do. It's apparently a reflection of the degree of desperation of citizens who are almost at the point where you have to choose between starving and doing something criminal. But in all cases, it's always better for things to be done in an organized manner. So it would have been better that that was done, because as you loot, you empty the place. There is no opportunity anymore for organized distribution, and there is no way of measuring sustainable distribution in a way that will solve the problem that is on ground. So it's unfortunate, very, very unfortunate, but nevertheless, it's a reflection of the level of desperation of citizens who have gotten to the last point on the poverty line and on hunger.
Let's also look at what the law says in situations like this. I mean, even though we know that food items were largely looted in that warehouse, but there were also cases of roofing sheets, motorcycles, and maybe many other non-consumables, taken from the place. So, I mean, at what point would you say the law draws a line on this?
The point at which the law draws the line is the point at which you enter the premises without authorization and take out things that do not belong to you. Every action, everything taken out, including the food, they are criminal actions. There is no doubt about that. But you can be sure that when people move in with intent to take what is not theirs, when they move in, if they don't find food, they will take any other thing that they see there. You can reason that their reasoning will be that they can exchange whatever they see for the food that they need. So, I mean, even the taking of the food is not justified. Yes, we can rationalize and say, oh, there is great need to intervene. There is great need for something urgent to be done. But it does not justify the taking of the food that is stored in that place, which is supposed to be for systematic and coordinated distribution.
Now, talking about systematic and coordinated distribution, many have faulted the way palliatives, particularly, from the government, it's been distributed. Some will tell you that they haven't even seen, traces of such in their area, not to talk less of being recipients of such. Looking at it from your own, professional perspective, how would you rate, number one, the palliative initiatives by the current administration to help sort of buffer the hardship in the land, and also the coordination process when it comes to distribution of these palliatives?
I'm afraid we have a very poor history of handling of issues of this nature. It's not been too long we had the COVID situation where we were compelled to resort to palliatives and distribution. And you will agree that that was handled poorly. The bulk of those who should get it did not get it, and those who got it got something that is so infinitesimal that you can't say it addressed any problem for them. Something is wrong with the way we handle distribution of public property to deserving citizens. If we had our way, I would say we think of another way of handling the palliative.
Professor Wokocha, are you there?
Experience shows that we are extremely poor at handling such distribution. It falls into the wrong hands, and those who should do those goods in the market being sold in official, so it's a way. We do not have an effective way of distributing things of this nature. Our history shows that.
All right, before I let you go, let's talk about the other avenues the government can actually employ to sort of mitigate the hardship in the land. What policy initiatives do you think can be introduced to further ease the economic tension and hardship Nigerians are going through?
I am afraid we are in a very bad situation, and I say this with every sense of responsibility. Everything about cost of living has risen, where the means of living has not at all moved from where it was for decades now. It's going to be extremely difficult to do an effective intervention that will address the issues. But perhaps part of what the state can do is whatever that they have to do that will enable the little that is left in the hands of citizens be able to get them at least the barest minimum of what they need for sustenance. We can't talk of subsidy in the way in which we talked about in the past, even though you know that subsidy is something that virtually every country gives to its citizens in one area or the other. And the challenge we had was the inability to address the corruption that had changed the subsidy policy in Nigeria into a means of siphoning massive funds from public coffers. So I think it's difficult to come in with something that you can say, okay, do this. Even if you pay something into the accounts of citizens, if you pay 25,000, 30,000 into the account of every citizen, how much of the problem can that address? Is it the transportation? Is it cost of food in the market? Is it health? It's going to be a massive issue. We unfortunately have to start thinking of how to address this problem in a manner that can prevent us from getting to the present kind of state in which we are. Maybe a subsidized transport, subsidized health, so that things they have to get from public hospitals and public purchasing places will be at a lower rate than what the economy has made it now from the challenge that we are facing. So if you do that, the little they have, they will be able to go, even though those places will be crowded, but at least they will have outlets where they can go and be able to get something that they wouldn't be able to get in the open market. The situation is there. I can tell you the situation is there, and there is not much magic that can be done at this moment.
All right, thank you so much for your time. Associate Professor of Public Law, Rivers State University, Ritchard Wokocha. Deeply appreciate you, sir. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
All right, now the Director of the Commonwealth Institute of Advanced and Professional Studies, Professor Anthony Kila, has called for deliberate involvement of stakeholders in the Nigerian educational sector, as well as government officials, to uphold the safety and social welfare of children in the country. The University Don made this known while speaking at a recent event in Lagos. News Central's Adegboye tells us more.
As of 2022, Nigeria accounted for about 20 million out-of-school children, a number that grew double its size in 2 years. One of the key factors responsible for this trend is economic barriers, conflict, sociocultural norms, and lack of inclusive policies or practices in schools. Over time, many non-governmental organizations and passionate individuals have managed to reduce these numbers through foundations and donations, one of whom is Nima Fadipe, a 29-year-old philanthropist who unfortunately died untimely, leaving these legacies behind. A foundation has now been founded in her name, managed by her mother, with a focus on ensuring children's safety and social welfare.
My late daughter, Nima Talai, was the founder. She's always done things for the children, orphanage homes, and she does Water is Life in her days. And she goes to children's hospital to help them pick up children on the street. This is far back, probably about 13, 15 years ago. She goes on the street, picks up children, educate them, bring them to her business, and try to empower them.
Speakers at the event highlighted the importance of upholding children's safety amidst economic barriers or conflict.
I don't know how you're going to take this, but I feel the urge to say it. Don't stop giving children motivational books to read. Let them read literature, let them read art, let them read history. Let them read things that will really, really shape their imagination. Not how to do this, confidence in yourself. No. They will develop the confidence. What they need as children to be safe is to have the lexicon to express themselves. To know that they do not need to shout to express themselves. They do not need to cry. They do not need to run away. They do not need to lie. That they can explain what they want.
Vulnerable kids is a society thing, and it goes beyond the government to do. We as individuals, able bodies, we should be able to support the government and take some of these kids out of the street.
The actions or inactions of government impact children more strongly than any other group in the society. Thus, speakers here have called for the protection of children's rights and welfares for the prosperity of the nation. In Lagos for News Central, Adegboye.
Nigeria's Association of Senior Civil Servants have expressed worry over the exclusion of the nation's organized labor in the recently constituted Implementation Committee of the federal government, mandated to implement the Stephen Oronsaye report aimed at restructuring the nation's federal civil service. The chairman of the association, while speaking to newsmen in the nation's capital, Abuja, says that the exclusion of the organized labor in the committee leaves Nigerian workers unprotected. News Central's Idang Joseph tells us more.
Nigeria's government had recently announced the approval of the implementation of the Stephen Oronsaye report, expected to reduce the cost of governance. The report gives details of merging and scrapping of federal government agencies, especially those with duplicate functions.
This administration, under the leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, consistent again with his courage to take very far-reaching decisions in the interest of Nigeria, has taken a decision to implement the so-called Orosaye report.
The federal government set up an 8-man committee comprising the secretary to the government of the federation and others, expected to ensure the implementation of the report within the next 12 weeks. This has raised serious concerns for Nigeria's Association of Senior Civil Servants, saying the non-inclusion of the organized labor leaves Nigerian workers unprotected.
We have the organized labor which cut across TUC and NLC. It therefore means, as a spearhead, which is the Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria, which of course you know that the policy directly affects our members, and we are not in the committee that will implement it. We frown seriously and call on government that the organized labor must be part.
The association also called for the reduction in the number of proposed capital projects earmarked by governments in the light of the current economic hardship being faced by citizens. It also urged other arms of government to consider cutting their cost of operations.
The issue of cutting the cost of governance, it should be holistic. We should look at the executive, we should look at the legislative, and also the judiciary.
The association is also calling on the government to do more in cushioning the effects of the current hardship being faced nationwide. They say this will tremendously reduce the suffering of Nigerian workers. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
You're watching News Central now. Coming up, deadly unrest in Senegal cast shadow over election date. We have details of this and more after the break. The news continues in the west of the African continent, where Senegalese President Macky Sall has officially received a recommendation to hold the third presidential election on June 2nd, after deadly protests backed by a last-minute cancellation of the vote. The report followed a national dialogue that was boycotted by the opposition, which has demanded that the election be held before April 2nd, when Sall is supposed to step down. The West African country was thrown into a political crisis on February 3rd when Sall postponed the presidential election set for February 25th. His announcement, announced as a constitutional coup d'etat by the opposition, sparked the protest that resulted in 4 deaths. On February 15th, Sall Constitutional Council overhauled Sall, and ever since, the country has been waiting for a new date. Prosecutors in Guinea have sought crimes against humanity charge over a 2009 massacre in which at least 156 persons died. Former dictator Moussa Dadis Camara and 10 other former military and government officials are accused over the killing of 156 persons and the rape of at least 109 women by pro-junta forces at a political rally in a stadium in the capital, Conakry, in September 2009. They face charges ranging from the murder of sexual violence, kidnapping, arson, and looting, as Camara himself is charged with personal criminal responsibility and command responsibility. If the charge is retained by the court, it will mark a major development in the case probing one of the darkest episodes in the West African nation's history. The Gambian's parliament have begun examining a highly controversial bill on lifting a ban on female genital mutilation in force since 2015. The issue has divided Gambians for months, and a few dozen demonstrators gathered outside and inside parliament seeking the lifting of the ban. The bill says female circumcision is a deep-rooted cultural and religious practice, and that the ban infringes the right to practice traditions. But a number of civil society groups are urging the government to stand firm. UNICEF said in 2021 report that 76% of Gambian women aged between 15 and 49 had undergone genital mutilation. The South Africa's gross domestic product has increased by 0.1% in the fourth quarter of 2023, with transport and communication sector surging by 2.9% during the same period, contributing 0.2 percentage points to the overall GDP growth. Economic activities saw a boost in land and air transport alongside transportation, support services, and communication sectors. This latest statistics were released by the Statistician General, that's Risanga Moleke, addressing during a media parley earlier today.
We are saying that the economy has been moving sideways, but particularly after COVID, we can see that it's only 4 times that it contracted. It's on the lower part where we are amplifying that part so that we are able to see better what has happened post-COVID. And indeed, on the right-hand side, as of now, we are saying that the economy grew by 0.1%. Of industries, we can see that the industry that performed the most was transport, having performed at 0.2 of a percentage point, followed by mining and quarry, as well as personal services and finance that contributed 0.1 of a percentage point. But those that had a drawdown in the most were trade at negative 0.3 percentage points of a percentage point, and followed by agriculture at negative 0.2 of a percentage point. And indeed, we can see that it's just a coincidence that transport happens to have grown the strongest and indeed contributed the most. But there are times when the growth, the 2.9 that we are seeing of growth, sometimes that growth is not correspondent to the contribution that such a sector has.
The 2 accused in Demande brothers who were arrested in connection with the murder of AKA are making demands for their extradition from Eswatini. The trio made it clear to their legal representatives that they wanted to be assured that their safety would be prioritized in the whole process. Additionally, they stated that they want to be handed over to prison authorities, not to members of the South African Police Service. Meanwhile, Senzo Meyiwa's murder trial has resumed after a short break, with the first accused in the murder trial, Muzi Sibiya, bringing an application to his case reopened in the trial within a trial on the admissibility of a confession he made. Sibiya has also terminated the mandate of SIPO, and Advocate Tulani will represent him. France has become the first country in the world to explicitly include the right to abortion in its constitution. Parliamentarians voted to revise the country's 1958 constitution to enshrine women's guaranteed freedom to abort. The overwhelming 780 to 72 vote saw a standing ovation in Parliament in Versailles, where the result was announced. Now, President Emmanuel Macron described the moves as French pride that had sent a universal message. However, anti-abortion groups have strongly criticized the change, as has the Vatican. Abortion has been legal in France since 1975, but polls show around 85% of the public supported amending the constitution to protect the right to end a pregnancy. Now, joining us now to give a bit more insight on this is our international correspondent, Afia Egan. Thank you for your time, Afia. Now, let's get to it. Some persons are saying that President Macron is using this issue to win votes, ahead of polls. What do you make of this?
Well, opposition to this was pretty much non-existent from the right wing, and I think a lot of people expected perhaps that there would be opposition, but rather his critics say that he was using this to drum up left-wing support, and that actually there was no need for this to be put into constitutional law. Now, there have been updates to the right to abortion in constitutional law in France since 1975. There's been about 9 updates, and those have been about providing more access to abortion rights. But now this has been put into the Constitution. A lot of people are saying it already was a right. Access was already quite free, and that in fact this was just all about getting the left wing on his side ahead of an election to put this into constitutional law. 85% of people were in favour of this across France, with only 15% thinking that perhaps it wasn't necessary. So it's been hailed as a great victory and pretty much groundbreaking, one of the only countries to do this. But a lot of people saying that actually perhaps it wasn't necessary, that the rights were already there, and this is actually about President Macron making sure that he can shore up the left wing ahead of an election.
Now, this appears to be an indirect response to the United States stance on abortion. And of course, this still remains a big issue. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, this is an absolutely huge issue since the overturning of Roe versus Wade in 2022. Now, Roe versus Wade basically brought in the trimester system when it came to the right to end a life. And it was an absolute right to an abortion in the first trimester of pregnancy. In the second trimester, there was some government regulation. And in the third trimester, there was strict bans on abortion, and they were only allowed if there was a threat to the mother's life or to the fetus, to the point where it couldn't live outside the womb. Now, the Roe versus Wade, when that was overturned, all those laws were put into doubt. And this basically happened in Mississippi. They were the first place where the Supreme Court banned abortions after 15 weeks. Millions of women lost that constitutional right to end a pregnancy at that time. And now individual states are also doing the same and banning the procedure. And half of states in the US are expected to bring in these new restrictions thanks to these trigger laws. And these are obviously brought by the 9 judges who are in the US Supreme Court at the moment, 6 of whom are Republican-leaning judges. So yes, it still remains a very big issue, and it's one that will take America into the next election. The right to life, the right to an abortion, the right to end pregnancies is a huge issue, and is going to remain a huge issue as we get towards the election in November.
Now, should we expect to see other countries follow suit in the coming weeks?
Well, there is a fear that more countries might actually go the other way, that they might follow the US route of repealing laws. Poland has some pretty strict abortion laws at the moment and is thinking of bringing in more. But on the other hand, quite recently, you have had more rights brought in countries such as Argentina and New Zealand and Ireland as well, that have given more access to abortions. So I think at the moment, perhaps we won't see leanings either way, but it's thought that perhaps what happened in the United States, more than what's happened in France, might influence countries as we go down the road.
All right, thank you for your time, Afia. Today on News Central. Today on News Central's Business Edge, it was, of course, considered on the show that Nigeria's capital market would focus on the earning of the vital cement sector as they analyzed the 2023 financial year results of the top 3 players, Lafarge, Dangote, Boer Cement. Ambrose Amodian, that's Chief Research Officer at Invest Data Consulting, provided a comparative analysis of their fundamentals, assessing their innovation and also risk mitigation strategies, and also market share growth efforts.
Look, in terms of comparison, we'll start with price. Well, price is king in any market. If you look at the price they are selling, you can see that yes, Dangote cement is already around 600 and something naira. We're seeing a Boer around around 155, and Lafarge around 32, 33. But if you look at dividend yield, you can see for yourself, paying 190 kobo against 2 naira and against also 30 naira. As an investor, those that are looking at fundamental, where do you put your tent? So we say, okay, let me go to the one that is paying 1 naira 90 kobo because of what I'll get more shares. If you almost multiply it, almost getting more than half what the other big one is paying. For that, these are what investors want to look at to see where they can put their tent. But I believe that the performance of the trade company is a reflection of what's happening in the economy, but I would say it's not a total bad performance, considering the climate where we are today, coming from 2023.
A tearful Jason Kelsey confirmed his retirement after 13 seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles. The 36-year-old spent his entire career with Philadelphia, helping them win their first Super Bowl in 2018 and reach the NFL showpiece again in 2023. Kelsey was a 6th-round draft pick by the Eagles in 2011, but is now regarded as one of NFL's best ever centers. He cried as he began a statement lasting more than 40 minutes and continued to hold back tears. A 7-time Pro Bowl selection, he won 205 games and holds the franchise record for consecutive starts. He will be remembered as a Philadelphia legend, securing that status with a passionate speech during his Super Bowl parade in 2018 on the steps made famous by the Rocky moves.
Feeling of immense heartbreak I had selfishly. For myself and for my teammates. And at the same time, the amount of pride I had that my brother had climbed the mountaintop once again. We have a small family.
And that's a wrap on the news at this time. But before we go, another look at some of our top stories. We told you that Nigerian government has described looting of Abuja warehouse as a criminal act. Prosecutors make case for crimes against humanity charge in Guinea massacre trial. Finally, we also told you that the accused brothers have asserted conditions for extradition in legal battle in AKA murder case. Don't forget to send in your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. You can also follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV channel 422, StarTimes channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. And thanks for watching. I am Dapo Adegboye. Bye for now.